I never thought I'd be telling this story to a camera, let alone the entire internet, but here we are. It all started when I, a literal princess, decided to go undercover as a normal girl. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? More like a nightmare disguised as a Disney movie. I found myself entangled in a web of lies, fake friendships, and a betrayal so deep it still makes my stomach churn. The question I'm left with, and the one I need your honest opinion on, is this. Was I wrong for taking everything from her, for revealing her true colors to the world after she tried to destroy mine? Tell me, would you have done the same thing if your entire identity, your very existence, was on the line? Let me take you back to the beginning, to a life most people only dream of. I am Princess Anya of Eldoria. Yes, the Princess Anya. My days were a whirlwind of diplomatic engagements, charity galas, and trying to master the art of the perfect royal wave. It was all very glamorous on the surface, but beneath it all, I felt like a gilded bird in a very beautiful cage. My parents, the king and queen, were loving, but incredibly protective. Every decision, every move, was scrutinized. I longed for a taste of normalcy, for a chance to just be Anya, not Princess Anya. The idea had been brewing for months. A secret fantasy I nurtured during my endless protocol lessons. I wanted to experience life without the royal title, without the bodyguards, without the constant expectations. I wanted to know what it was like to make friends who didn't care about my crown, to fall in love with someone who saw me, not my status. So I hatched a plan. It was audacious, some might say foolish, but I was determined. I convinced my parents, after what felt like weeks of impassioned pleas and tearful arguments, to let me attend a prestigious university in a neighboring country, under a false identity. My cover story was meticulously crafted. I was Anya Petrova, an orphan from a small, unassuming town, who had received a scholarship through sheer academic brilliance. It sounds like something out of a bad young adult novel. I know, but I was so desperate for this experience. My parents, surprisingly, agreed, albeit with an entire team of covert security operating in the shadows. They set me up with a modest apartment off campus, a small allowance that felt ridiculously meager compared to my usual budget, and a new wardrobe that consisted mostly of jeans and t-shirts. No designer gowns, no bespoke jewelry. It was liberating and terrifying all at once. I remember the first day I walked into my dorm room. It was small, smelled slightly of floor wax, and had a cracked window. In the palace, my bedroom was larger than this entire floor. But as I sat on that thin, squeaky mattress, I felt a rush of adrenaline I had never experienced before. I was alone. I was responsible for myself. I had to figure out how to do laundry, how to buy groceries without a chef, and how to talk to people without them bowing. It was the most exciting day of my life. The first few weeks were a blur of new experiences. Learning to cook for myself, which resulted in setting off the smoke alarm 3 times in 1 week. Figuring out public transport, and navigating social interactions without the inherent deference that came with being a princess. It was exhilarating. I chose to major in art history, a subject I genuinely loved but rarely had time to pursue amidst my royal duties. My classes were fascinating, and I even started to make a few acquaintances. Then I met Chloe. Chloe was everything I wasn't. Effortlessly cool, with a vibrant energy that drew people to her. She had a mischievous glint in her eyes, a quick wit, and a seemingly endless supply of confidence. She was a natural leader in our small group of friends, and I, the quiet, scholarly Anya Petrova, found myself gravitating towards her. She took me under her wing, showed me the ropes of campus life, and introduced me to her friends. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, truly belonged, without my title preceding me. We spent countless hours in coffee shops, studying, gossiping, and sharing our dreams. Chloe wanted to be a famous fashion designer, and she would sketch designs in her notebook during lectures, her eyes alight with passion. I found myself confiding in her, sharing my orphan backstory, making up details about my non-existent small-town life. It felt wrong to lie, but I couldn't risk revealing my true identity. The stakes were too high. She, in turn, shared her own struggles. A difficult relationship with her stepmother, financial worries, and the pressure to succeed. We became inseparable, best friends in the truest sense of the word. I genuinely loved her. She made me laugh until my sides ached, and she was always there to listen when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer ordinariness of my new life. We would stay up until 3 a.m. talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her first heartbreak, and I told her about my imaginary strict parents who wouldn't let me date. It was a beautiful lie that felt like a beautiful truth. I started to forget that I was a princess. I started to believe that Anya Petrova was the real me. As the months rolled by, our friendship deepened, or so I thought. We shared meals, secrets, and late-night study sessions that often devolved into hours of deep conversation about the world. I remember one specific night where we sat on the balcony of my small apartment, looking at the city lights. I felt so free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a symbol. I was just a girl with a friend. Chloe told me about her childhood, about how she had to fight for everything she had. She talked about the bitterness she felt toward the elites of the world, the people born into wealth who didn't understand the value of a dollar. I listened intently, feeling a pang of guilt. Here I was, the ultimate elite, pretending to be one of the people she admired for their struggle. I wanted to tell her the truth so badly in that moment. I wanted to say, "Chloe, I'm not who you think I am, but I value you more than any crown." But I stayed silent. I was afraid that if I told her, the magic would vanish. I was afraid she would look at me with the same cold, distant respect everyone else did. That silence would eventually become my biggest regret. I began to buy her things, extra coffees, books she needed, even a dress she sighed over in a window. I thought I was being a good friend, helping her through her struggles. I didn't realize I was feeding a monster. I didn't realize that every time I pulled out my wallet, her eyes narrowed with a calculation I was too naive to see. I thought it was gratitude. It was actually greed. Around the start of the second semester, the atmosphere began to change. Chloe's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started showing up late to our meetings, or not showing up at all. When she did arrive, she seemed preoccupied with my belongings. She would admire my laptop, my simple but high-quality watch, and even my shoes. "You have such good taste for an orphan, Anya," she would say with a sharp, forced smile. "It's almost like you've been around nice things your whole life." I tried to laugh it off, attributing it to her interest in fashion and design. But then things started disappearing. It began with small things. A pair of earrings I'd left on the counter. A designer scarf my mother had slipped into my luggage that I thought was inconspicuous enough to wear. When I asked Chloe if she had seen them, she would get defensive. "Are you accusing me of something, Anya? I thought we were friends. I thought you knew my situation." She would play the victim card so effectively that I ended up apologizing to her. I felt like a terrible friend for even suspecting her. She started asking for loans. $50 here, $100 there. She always had a crisis. Her car broke down, her phone bill was overdue, her stepmother cut her off. Because I had access to royal funds, carefully funneled through a shell account, I didn't think twice about it. But the more I gave, the more she resented me. It was a toxic cycle I didn't know how to break. I was so desperate to keep my only real friend that I was willing to buy her loyalty, not realizing that loyalty that can be bought isn't loyalty at all. But the suspicions didn't stop there. One day, I returned to my apartment to find my laptop open. I'm meticulous about closing it and locking it with a complex password. When I checked the logs, someone had tried to access my private files that contained encrypted communications with the palace. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had Chloe seen something? Had she guessed the truth? I began to distance myself slightly, needing space to think. This only seemed to fuel her fire. She started a whisper campaign in our department. She told people I was a charity case who was secretly arrogant. She told our mutual friends that I had made up my orphan story to get attention, and that I was actually the spoiled daughter of a corrupt businessman in hiding. The rumors were wild, inconsistent, and devastating. I watched as my newly formed social circle began to shrink. People who used to sit with me in the cafeteria now looked away when I walked by. I felt the old isolation of the palace creeping back in. But this time, it was colder because it was rooted in hatred, not protocol. I tried to talk to her, to ask what was wrong, but she would just roll her eyes and say I was being dramatic and paranoid. She was gaslighting me so perfectly that I began to question my own sanity. Maybe I was being arrogant. Maybe I was acting like I was better than them. I tried even harder to be humble, to blend in, but it only made her more aggressive. She wanted to break me. The tension reached a breaking point during our midterm project for art history. We were tasked with curate a mini exhibition. I had chosen a theme of hidden identities in Renaissance art, a topic that felt deeply personal. I spent weeks in the library, researching obscure painters who had to hide their true selves to survive. Chloe, on the other hand, was struggling. Her sketches were beautiful but lacked the depth required for the academic portion of the assignment. She asked to see my research notes one afternoon, claiming she just needed inspiration for her bibliography. Trusting her one last time, I handed over my tablet. That was my mistake. The next day, our professor called me into his office. He presented me with a paper that was almost an exact replica of my research, submitted by Chloe hours before I had even finished my draft. Anya, he said, looking disappointed. Chloe claims you stole her ideas. She says she's been helping you all semester because you couldn't keep up with the curriculum. She even showed me drafts on her computer that date back weeks. I was stunned. The sheer audacity of the lie left me speechless. I tried to explain, but Chloe had already documented her process by backdating her digital files, something she was much better at than I was. She had even told the professor that I had been leeching off her because I was too busy partying with my secret money. I left the office feeling like the world was spinning. I spent that night in tears, staring at the ceiling of my apartment. I felt so small. I had all the power of a kingdom behind me, yet here in the real world, I was being dismantled by a girl I had called my sister. My security team, led by a man named Marcus who had been with my family for 20 years, finally intervened. He met me in a park, disguised as a gardener. "Princess," he said, his voice low and firm. "Enough is enough. We have been monitoring her digital footprint. She didn't just steal your work. She's been contactable by a tabloid journalist. She's trying to sell your location and a fabricated story about you being a runaway who stole money from her family. She's been taking photos of you in private moments, when you're tired, when you're crying, when you're vulnerable. She's going to ruin the monarchy's reputation along with your own. She's already taken $5,000 from this journalist as a down payment." Hearing that changed something inside me. The soft, naive Anya who wanted to be normal died in that park. I realized that normal people didn't just let themselves be walked over. Normal people fought back. If Chloe wanted to play games with power, she was about to realize she was playing against a grandmaster. I asked Marcus for everything they had on her. I wanted the truth, not just about what she did to me, but about who she really was. What he found was a trail of destruction that went back years. Chloe wasn't a struggling student. She was a professional social climber who had been expelled from 2 other schools for similar behavior. She was a predator. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, a princess living as a commoner, and my best friend was not only stealing my academic work, but was actively trying to sell my soul to the highest bidder in the media. She was prepared to throw me to the wolves for a paycheck. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let her get away with it? Would you have just packed your bags and gone back to your gilded cage, defeated? Or would you have fought back, revealing her true nature, even if it meant risking your own carefully constructed lie? The weight of the crown was suddenly very heavy, even though I wasn't wearing it. I had to decide if I was going to be the victim of this story or the hero. I spent the next week meticulously planning. I didn't pull away from Chloe. Instead, I leaned in. I pretended to be heartbroken about the misunderstanding with the professor. I cried on her shoulder, telling her I forgave her, and that I was just happy to have her in my life. I saw the flash of triumph in her eyes. She thought she had completely broken my spirit. I even confided in her that my wealthy benefactor was coming to the end of semester gala and was looking to invest in a new fashion line. "He's very private, Chloe," I whispered, "but he has millions. If you impress him, your future is set." I saw the greed ignite in her eyes. It was sickening. She began to treat me like a queen, ironically, thinking I was her ticket to the big leagues. She even started returning some of the items she'd stolen, claiming she found them in the laundry room. Meanwhile, Marcus and the security team were working overtime. They intercepted her emails to the journalist, replacing the evidence she thought she had with digital footprints that would lead back to her own fraudulent activities. We also found out she had been stealing from other students for years, using a sophisticated lost and found scam. We gathered testimony from students at her previous universities. We built a dossier that was thicker than a textbook. We were ready. The night of the gala was a masterpiece of royal orchestration. The ballroom was a sea of velvet and silk, filled with the elite of the city and the university's top donors. My parents had agreed to let me handle this my way, provided they could be there to witness it. Chloe arrived in a stunning gown, one she had told everyone she designed herself, but which my team had traced to a boutique she'd shoplifted from in the city just 2 days prior. She was glowing, thinking this was her moment. She was scheduled to give the keynote student speech as the representative of the arts department, a position she'd gained by stepping on everyone else and stealing my research. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd with practiced humility, I sat in the front row, wearing a simple black dress, a stark contrast to her vibrant stolen gown. She started her speech, talking about integrity and the struggle of the artist. It was nauseating to hear her use the very words I had written in my notes. She thanked her dear friend Anya for being such an inspiration. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Then the lights dimmed. A screen behind her, meant to show her portfolio, flickered to life. But it didn't show her sketches. It showed a high-definition video of her in my apartment, going through my drawers and trying to crack my laptop. The audio was crystal clear. You could hear her muttering, "Where is the money, you little orphan brat?" The room went dead silent. Then, the screen changed to show her emails to the tabloid journalist, where she offered to sell out the fake princess for more money. It showed her bank statements where the journalist's payments had landed. Then the audio transitioned to a recording of her laughing with another student about how pathetic and easy to manipulate I was, and how she was going to use my benefactor to pay for her move to Paris. The gasps from the audience were like a physical wave. Chloe turned around, her face pale as death. She tried to signal the tech booth to shut it off, but my team was in control of the server. The video then transitioned to a list of the items she had stolen from other students over the last 3 years, complete with police reports from her previous universities that she had managed to hide. It was a complete, systematic destruction of her character. The final blow was the special guest introduction. The doors at the back of the hall swung open. My father, the king, hadn't come in disguise this time. He entered the ballroom in his full military regalia, flanked by a full royal guard. The university president nearly fell over himself, bowing so low he almost hit the floor. My father didn't look at the crowd, he looked at me. I stood up, shed the Anya Petrova persona, and walked toward him. The silence was so heavy you could hear a pin drop. I turned to look at Chloe, who was now shaking, clutching the podium for support, her stolen dress looking like a cheap costume. "You wanted to know who my benefactor was, Chloe," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone I was still wearing. "Meet my father. And as for your career in fashion, I think you'll find that the world is very small for someone with no honor. You didn't just betray a friend. You betrayed the values of this institution." I walked out of the ballroom with my father, my head held high, leaving the wreckage of her lies behind. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Chloe was expelled immediately and faced multiple charges for theft, fraud, and attempted extortion. The best friend who tried to sell my life ended up losing her own. The tabloid journalist she was working with was hit with a massive legal suit from our royal council that ensured he would never work in the industry again. My classmates were in shock, and for a few days, I was the most famous person on the planet. I returned to Eldoria, but I didn't return as the same girl. I had learned that being a normal person doesn't mean being weak, and being a princess doesn't mean being a victim. I realized that the freedom I was looking for wasn't in a fake name or a small apartment. It was in the strength to choose who I let into my circle. I spent weeks in the palace gardens, processing everything. I realized that I had been so hungry for connection that I had ignored every red flag. I learned that true friends don't make you feel guilty for what you have. And they don't use your vulnerabilities as weapons. I still paint, but now my art is displayed in the National Gallery, and I don't care if anyone calls it a fake, because I know the truth of the hands that created it. I even started a foundation for students who have been victims of academic theft and bullying, using the very funds I would have used for my tuition. Looking back, I don't regret the exposure. Chloe was a predator who had been hurting people long before I arrived. She would have kept doing it if someone didn't stop her. I was just the one who had the resources and the reason to do it. Sometimes you have to use your crown as a shield, not just a decoration. It was a painful journey, but it taught me that the most important identity we have isn't the one given to us by birth, but the one we forge through our actions when things get tough. I lost a friend, but I found my voice. I learned that even in a world of normal people, there are monsters, and sometimes the only way to beat a monster is to show them exactly what they are. I am Anya, a princess by birth, but a warrior by choice. I will never let anyone dim my light again. And I will never apologize for protecting my truth. My experiment with normalcy ended in an explosion of drama, but it gave me a clarity that 1,000 years of royal training never could. I know who I am now. I know who my real friends are. And I know that the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, always finds a way to the surface. If this story touched your heart even a little, please subscribe to the channel. Your one subscription gives me the strength to keep sharing these stories. Like this video if you were on my side. And don't forget to share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Was I too harsh, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Would you have gone as far as I did to protect your name? I'm reading all the comments, so let me know. I'll see you all in the next story.